Welcome to Ghost Carrier, our 15-part alternative history audio series about a world where America lost the Pacific War. This is the tale of a doomed aircraft carrier and its crew, stranded in the vast Pacific by a supernatural twist of fate. This story has been adapted from my book, Ghost Carrier. You can purchase the full version in paperback, Kindle, or audiobook from the links in this episode's description. I'm Robert Child, and episode 10 will begin in a moment.
You know, it's really a privilege to be involved with a documentary about the USS Franklin. And the Franklin was something that I'd always been fascinated by. And then producer Joe Small and producer-director Rob Childs come to me and say, look, how about if you use your dulcet tones to tell the Franklin story? So as I began to look through the story, and as Rob and Joe kept sending me more and more material, this thing was peeling like an onion. I was seeing more and more and more of a really, really important story in naval history, and one which hadn't been told. So they had to throw a 2-inch heaving line on me to keep me from charging right down here to the studio and helping to put this together.
Captain Dale Dye narrates USS Franklin, Honor Restored. Available now on Amazon Prime.
Ghost Carrier, They Died to Fight Another Day. Written by Robert Child. Narrated by Kirk Winkler. Dayton, Ohio. Frank sat on the edge of the bed in his home in the late afternoon, silently staring across at the framed photographs on the dresser. Everyone he had ever loved, anyone he had ever given a damn about, stared back at him from the silver frames. If he couldn't get his father back, all these people would disappear from his life. It was soul-crushing. He realized at that moment that he had spent his entire lifetime taking almost everything he had for granted, especially the people he loved. Now his very existence hung in the balance, along with all the people he cared most about in the world. Unbearable hopelessness overwhelmed him. How in the hell was he ever going to get his dad back? How in the world was it even possible? He hung his head, and a river of tears flowed. He cried in anguish, not for himself, but for the people who surrounded him and had made his life worth living. Now they were all going to disappear. Next morning, Frank awoke with a start, his eyes bright. He had slept soundly the entire night. This was a new sensation. There had been no horrifying visions. In fact, he couldn't recall anything of the night except placing his head on the pillow at 10 p.m., closing his eyes, and going to sleep. His energy was surprisingly renewed. He literally leaped out of bed. It woke up Katie. She looked over at him in surprise as he danced back and forth in front of the dresser.
"Frank, what's gotten into you? Are you feeling all right?"
"Katie, I'm more than all right. I didn't have the visions. I slept the whole frickin' night."
"You did?"
"Damn right I did. I feel like $1,000,000. I've got so much energy." He continued to glide giddily back and forth across the room like a man just released from prison. "You know what?"
"What, dear?"
"I feel like taking a walk." He looked down at his wrist to check the time, only to discover his watch was missing. There wasn't even a tan line. "Honey, have you seen my watch?"
"It's always on your wrist."
I know. I don't remember taking it off. Only time I ever take it off is to take a shower." He headed for the bathroom. Katie got out of bed to help him search.
"It must be under something."
Frank continued to slide open drawers multiple times, then peered into the medicine cabinet. Katie looked in the tub and behind the toilet. The watch was nowhere to be found. Frank stormed out of the bathroom, anger spilling out, mixed with a little stab of fear. He turned back around to Katie. "That watch is the only thing I had of his, the only thing. and now it's gone. Gone! He stomped down the stairs and out the front door. Katie lingered in the bathroom. Chills traveled down her spine. She knew the watch was not just lost. Something had changed. Off the coast of Molokai Island, 2 Japanese transport vessels carrying a select group of 600 of the captured American sailors of Task Force 52.13 steamed forward toward the brutal wind-blown northern coast of Molokai. All of the sailors in Mullinix's battle group had been separated and sent to different sections of the Hawaiian Islands. The prisoners on these 2 ships were Mullinix's flagship crew from the Liscum Bay. Standing on the deck, the admiral could not in his deepest, darkest nightmares imagine the further horrors that awaited his crew. The transport ships were sailing toward an inhospitable island and a barren shelf of land the approximate size of Lower Manhattan. The shelf jutted into the Pacific from the base of the tallest sea cliffs in the world. 3 sides of the peninsula were ringed by jagged lava rocks, making landings impossible, and the 4th side consisted of the 2,000-foot natural cliff wall so sheer that mountain goats tumbled off its face. Adding misery and fear to the remoteness of this natural prison, this forbidding place held a sinister secret that had completely sealed this spit of earth off from the rest of humanity. Kalaupapa Peninsula. Joe Rusk, gaunt and scratching a growing beard, exited from one of the hastily built canvas shelters within what they came to call the pen to greet his second week of captivity. He and his fellow sailors were surrounded on 4 sides by a 20-foot-high razor-wire-topped fence under the watchful eyes of a company of 100 hardened, fanatical Japanese soldiers. Joe figured these were the hard-luck bastards who drew the short straws. Their brutality, perhaps, sprung from their assignment to this harsh, desolate place. Even the most minor infractions, such as swiping an extra piece of bread on the chow line, were dealt with severely. The first beheading Joe and the men were forced to witness caused most of the sailors to instantly vomit, including Joe. The head was sliced clean off with a single 2-handed strike from a long Japanese samurai sword. The headless sailor's heart shot geysers of blood from the neck as the body's hands convulsed wildly. The worst beheading, and the image that gave Joe nightmares, was the time one unfortunate soul kept screaming to God for help as the Japanese soldier looming over him raised his sword for the fatal strike. After the sickening slice, the screams seemed to echo another second as the head flew through the air. Its terror-filled eyes wildly blinked open and closed. The head rolled to a stop at Joe's feet with its open eyes staring up at him. Joe was convinced there was not another place on the earth more fitting of the term God-forsaken. He felt with absolute certainty God had left here a long time ago. The perimeter of the prison camp closest to the high fences was littered with the stench of death from the rotting corpses of the men who collapsed from thirst or starvation. In this dead zone, bodies lay prostrate on the ground, their lifeless, empty eye sockets staring up at the blazing sun as seagulls and pelicans fought over the carcasses. The crew was never allowed to bury their fellow fallen sailors. Occasionally, the guards would throw the remains into the sea to reduce the smell. Joe and the men soon recognized that to the Japanese, POW status meant they were the lowest form of life on Earth, not even human. Japanese soldiers considered surrender a disgrace. If capture became imminent, a Japanese soldier often committed suicide. In the Japanese mind, the POWs had disgraced their uniform and country and did not deserve to live. For his part, Joe was barely hanging on. He had adjusted to the one piece of bread at breakfast and another at dinner. It was the dysentery and his meager 4-ounce daily water ration that was draining the life from him. He constantly drifted in and out of hallucinations. This morning he woke up and thought he saw and felt his old Hamilton watch on his wrist, the one he had left with Franny. Blinking his eyes open and closed several times, the watch returned to what he expected to see, his stainless steel Omega. But for a moment, in the morning haze, Joe could have sworn on a stack of Bibles the Hamilton was absolutely real. But it was this horrific island prison camp that was all too real. Even the way they had come ashore had been another brutal fight for survival.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Ghost Carrier, our 15-part alternative history series. Join us next time for another installment. This story has been adapted from my book, Ghost Carrier. You can purchase the full version in paperback, Kindle, or audiobook from the links in this episode's description. And if you like what you hear, leave a review or a rating, or just click the follow button. I'm Robert Child, and this has been Ghost Carrier, only on Point of the Spear.
Music licensed from audioblocks.com. Point of the Spear is produced by RSC Media Group.